In 1985, an entire family was found slaughtered in their farmhouse in Essex, but the investigation that followed may or may not have answered a question: who killed them? This is the case of the White House Farm mass murders. As always, I mean no disrespect to anyone mentioned, and this is all public information that I have found on the internet that I have compiled into one video. Thank you to Dean French for suggesting this case to me. Jeremy Bamber. On the 13th of January 1961, a baby boy named Jeremy Paul Marsham was born in Kensington, London. His mother was Juliet Dorothy Wheeler, and she was a vicar's daughter. She fell pregnant when she had an affair with Army Sergeant Major Leslie Bryan Marsham, who was a controller at Buckingham Palace. The same year Jeremy was born, she gave him up for adoption through the Church of England's Children's Society. When Jeremy was only 6 months old, he was adopted by Neville and June Bamber. They had adopted a little girl named Sheila only 4 years before this. Neville was a former RAF pilot and local magistrate. They lived at White House Farm, Essex, in a big Georgian farmhouse. In September 1970, at the age of 9 years old, Jeremy was sent to a boarding school called Gresham School in Holt, Norfolk. Neville was pretty angry with Jeremy when he left that school with no qualifications, but their relationship bettered in 1978 when he managed to pass 7 O-levels at a sixth form college in Colchester. After he had left school, Neville funded a trip to Australia so Jeremy could take a scuba diving course. He was then moved to New Zealand, where he claims that he was ripped off by a would-be heroin dealer whilst he was smuggling heroin overseas. He also states that he broke into a jewelry shop and stole 2 watches, one of which he gave to a girlfriend back in the UK. His cousin claimed that he left New Zealand because his friend was involved in an armed robbery. When Jeremy arrived back in the UK, he decided to try working in restaurants and pubs for a little bit, but it didn't really work out. He finally decided to start work on his father's farm. Neville set Jeremy up pretty nicely. He put him up in this cottage rent-free, gave him a car free of charge, and paid him £170 a week to work on the farm, which in today's money is £550 a week. And he also gave him an 8% stake in the local caravan park that he owned. Jeremy decided this wasn't enough and was very vocal about how little he was being paid, when it doesn't seem like a little amount of money, especially for back then. Sheila Bamber. Jeremy's adopted sister Sheila also had her fair share of problems during her lifetime, which meant that the relationship between Neville, June, and Sheila became pretty strained at times. At the age of 17, Sheila became pregnant with her then boyfriend Colin Caffell, but June forced her to get an abortion because she felt that she was too young and immature at that time to look after a child. Sheila went back to a secretarial college after the abortion to continue her studies and then went on to train to become a hairdresser. She found quite a lot of success when she went for a modeling agency and spent 2 months in Tokyo working on her career. At the age of 20, she married Colin and she fell pregnant again. Unfortunately, at 6 months in, she miscarried. The couple tried again, but they were successful this time, and in June 1979, she gave birth to 2 twin boys that she named Daniel and Nicholas. After having her sons, Sheila stopped her modeling career and started living off welfare and low-paying jobs such as waitressing and cleaning. She then decided to divorce Colin soon after finding out that he was having an affair. Things took a turn for the worse for Sheila after this, as she fell into a new friendship group and they gave her the nickname Bambi. She was regularly partying, taking drugs, and found herself with older men a lot of the time. June very much disapproved of this and would call her the devil's child, and Sheila blamed her adoptive mother for forcing her to get an abortion when she was younger. Sheila had a pretty dark history with mental health. She would regularly have violent outbursts and bang her head against the walls. When she was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1983, June and Neville decided to have her referred to a psychiatrist who described her as agitated, psychotic, and paranoid. The murders. On the 7th of August 1985, at around 3:30 a.m., police were made aware of a shooting at the White House farm. Upon entering the property, they found Neville deceased in the kitchen downstairs. When investigating further, they found Sheila deceased in her parents' bedroom with the rifle up against her throat. June was found in the same room. In another upstairs bedroom, Nicholas and Daniel, Sheila's 6-year-old twins, were found dead in their beds. The family had been shot a total of 25 times collectively at close range. The police were made aware of this incident by Jeremy Bamber, who told them that his father had called him in a panic, saying that Sheila had gone berserk. Jeremy had called the police after this apparent frantic phone call from his father and waited outside of the farmhouse for a responding officer. When this officer arrived, he thought he saw movement through one of the windows, so both him and Jeremy took cover and waited for backup. In fact, police did not enter the property for 4 hours as they believed there was an active shooter inside. When going in there, they believed that Sheila had killed her entire family before turning the gun on herself due to schizophrenia. The investigation. Police turned the investigation towards Jeremy after his ex-girlfriend, Julie Mugford, went to them saying that he had admitted to her that he slaughtered his entire family for the inheritance money. She also said that on the night of the murders, she received a phone call from him and he said, "Tonight is the night." After the death of his entire family, Jeremy started to spend his parents' money. He went on holiday to Amsterdam, and the travel agent even stated that he seemed in high spirits and was spending a lot of money on weed. He tried to sell a lot of his family's belongings, including trying to sell June's car to Julie Mugford's mum and putting an advert in the paper for Neville's car for £900. The weirdest thing that he tried to do after, though, was he tried to sell 20 naked photos of his dead sister Sheila to the Sun for £20,000. He seemed to be completely emotionally detached from the traumatic events that had just happened. Even at the funeral, 9 days after the deaths of his family, he put on a teary performance whilst the cameras were there, but on the way to the crematorium in the car, relatives say that he was making smutty jokes and his demeanour changed very quickly. Friends say that he was more concerned with how he was going to spend his newfound money and how much inheritance he was going to get, rather than the deaths of his entire family. Forensic experts decided to take a closer look at the scene and found some pretty disturbing evidence that didn't add up to it being a murder-suicide by Sheila. They found that Sheila actually had 2 gunshot wounds under her chin, which meant that she was murdered and did not kill herself, as after the first shot, she would have been incapable of wielding a gun. Firearm experts looked closer at the gun and realized that there was no silencer. They began to question the claims of Jeremy that Sheila was running amok with this gun, as the sound of the 25 shots that were fired would have alerted the family and neighbouring farms. But they realised that the gun was too long with the silencer on for Sheila to have shot herself with. His fingerprints were found on the murder weapon along with Sheila's. The silencer was found in a downstairs cupboard in the kitchen by his cousin, along with a single grey hair. The blood on the silencer matched Sheila, which meant that the silencer was on the weapon when Sheila was shot. And the grey hair that was found along with it was unfortunately lost after officers cleaned the crime scene up thinking that it was Sheila. In fact, police believed Jeremy so much that they burnt carpet and bedding at his request so he didn't have to see the blood of his family. The trial. The trial for Jeremy Bamber began on the 14th of October 1986 with his ex-girlfriend Julie Mugford as the star witness for the prosecution. Julie stated to the court that he would make murderous threats against his old father and that his mad mother and sister had nothing to live for. She also stated that he would speak of arson and hiring a hitman for £2,000. She continued on to say that he would regularly go to the caravan park and break into accommodations when clients weren't there to steal valuable items. Jeremy Bamber pleaded guilty to robbing the caravan park only weeks before the murders, but stated his innocence on the killings. The prosecution's case was that Jeremy Bamber had entered the family farmhouse in the middle of the night and shot 5 members of his family with a legally held rifle. The blood on the silencer found in the downstairs cupboard meant that Sheila could not have committed suicide in the upstairs bedroom. The defense's case was that Sheila had killed her entire family and then committed suicide after Neville and June had spoken to her about putting the twins in foster care because of her mental health. It was noted in court that the police actually drove past Jeremy Bamber on the way to the crime scene, and they said that he was going at a leisurely 30 miles an hour and that it was not a speed that someone would be going if they were trying to get to a family emergency. The scene of the crime found that Neville had initially been shot upstairs and he had managed to make his way down into the kitchen, presumably to get to the phone to call for help, but he was badly bludgeoned and shot and he didn't actually manage to get to the phone at all. This put doubt on Jeremy's story that he got a phone call from his father saying that his sister was running amok with the gun. They also questioned why, if he managed to get to the phone and call for help, why he called Jeremy and not the police. They also said that there was no blood on the phone, which indicated that he didn't get to the phone whatsoever, and that he was shot in the throat, which meant that he would have been unable to talk. Police actually stated that the movement they saw inside whilst Jeremy Bamber was outside could have easily have been moonlight reflecting off the window. They said that they never actually had a conversation with anyone inside the house and that the only sounds they heard coming from inside the house whilst Jeremy was stood outside with them was a dog barking. Jeremy Bamber was found guilty on all 5 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He currently resides in HMP Wakefield as a Category A prisoner and has appealed his conviction every opportunity he has got. He states that the police set him up. Life behind bars. During an appeal of his in 2002, Jeremy Bamber put up a £1 million reward for any information that would squash his conviction. This led to a Scotland Yard investigation of the crime. They agreed that Jeremy was the perpetrator. During his time in prison, Jeremy Bamber has won several awards for transcribing the books in the Braille workshop, and he's become a peer partner helping other inmates learn how to read and write. In 2001, The Times reported that Jeremy Bamber was living lavishly at HMP Long Lartin, where he had daily badminton lessons, had the keys to his cell, and even did art classes drawing supermodels, which he later sold by an outside agent. During his time in prison, he has made several legal attempts to try and get some of his family fortune back. His grandmother actually cut him out of her will and gave all of her inheritance to June's sister. He tried to sue her for money back on the farm and money back on the caravan park, as he had to sell his 8% share to pay for legal representation. Obviously, this didn't work. In 2012, Jeremy Bamber, along with two other inmates, Peter Moore, a convicted serial killer who has 4 confirmed victims, and Douglas Winter, someone who killed 2 people, went before the European Court of Human Rights. They stated that a whole life tariff without the possibility of ever being released is inhumane and degrading to their human rights. They lost that in front of the court, but then got the right to appeal in July 2012. They won that appeal, and in July 2013, the Grand Chamber stated that there must be a sentence review with the possibility of parole. Jeremy Bamber has launched a fresh appeal within the recent years, either 2021 or 2022. Quite a lot of sources say different. I think he's trying to get a fresh appeal now because his old case manager, the CCRC, actually quit because of the amount of appeals that he has tried to do. He now has a new case manager and he hopes that this new appeal will grant him some sort of parole or release. I do not think Jeremy Bamber should ever be released because the evidence is indisputable. He killed his family. So, that was the case of Jeremy Bamber and the White House Farm mass murders. I hope you enjoyed this video and let me know what you think of it in the comments down below, along with any other cases that you would like me to look into. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified about my next true crime case. And if you want to support my channel and read about this case, follow the link in the description to my vocal.